Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on what part of the world you are tuning in from. I'm Kevin Impeccable Peck, and again, this is the Chicken Box where you speak your truth. And man, we have a really amazing topic today. It's Black people versus organ donation. You said right. I said it. You heard it. We don't talk about it enough, especially in the African American community. Organ donation. And if this is your very first time checking in and you're not from the Baltimore area, maybe you've never heard of a chicken box. For us, it's four wings and fries. For everybody else, it can get greasy and be a little salt, pepper, ketchup. But for everybody else, it is like, what are you talking about? But this is where we come to speak our truth about a topic to enlighten, to inform, to educate, and to inspire our community about what's going on. Again, this is Black People versus Organ Donation, and I think Dr. Draper may be joining us. I always, Dr. Draper, welcome to
Thank you.
to the box. We're just getting started. If you just tuned in, share. If you've never heard anything about organ donations, you are in for some information. I want to say you're in for a treat, but I guess that's not really a treat kind of thing. But the information is powerful and needed in the communities that we serve. But I haven't even introduced our special guest yet. She's sitting there for Donate Life Maryland, right? Donate Life Maryland. But Dr. Draper, how are you this morning before we introduce our special guest?
Well. It's good to be on the box on today. Hello to everyone who's viewing us by way of Facebook Live now or who will be viewing us later. This is the platform, the show that we say, don't be a chicken. Kevin, you may have said this already, and get on the box, speak your truth. And our guests have been just phenomenal, just as our guests will be today, with so much information and insight. And this is a topic, Kevin, I really want to dig into this topic. I think there's so much misinformation about it. And so hesitation maybe on some people's part and maybe not on others. And so we welcome you, Lisa, to join us today. So glad to have you with us. Now, this is Kevin. Did you let everybody know this is a multi-generational show? And so, Lisa, we're going to find out what generation you're representing. I say that I am a millennial boomer, but I think I really getting to like these Gen Zers. So I may have to be a Gen Z, a Gen Z boomer. Not that any generation thinks alike all the time. So, welcome to the Chicken Box.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
You are so welcome. And so we are here today to talk about organ donation, and it sounds simple, but before we even get into it all the way, Lisa, you are the CEO, the executive director for Donate Life. It is a simple title for Donate Life, and so you have worked in a variety of capacities to enhance life in the quality of life on so many levels. Tell us a little bit about your journey to where you are now.
Sure. So many years ago, I started working with victim advocacy, working with victims of homicide, domestic violence, violent crime across the state of Maryland. Have become a training on many topics from domestic violence to death notification, victimization, working with victims. And then a few years ago, actually about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, ended up with Donate Life, working to save lives in a little bit different capacity.
Well, great. So you are a lifesaver in the true sense of the word. And so welcome to the Chicken Box. And I know that you said with domestic violence victims, and now you're looking and working and saving lives in a different way. I love the way that you said that. And so we're so glad to have you here. So Donate Life may not be a household word for many people. Can you tell us a little bit more about Donate Life?
Sure, absolutely. Donate Life is the Maryland nonprofit who's responsible for maintaining the organ and tissue donor registry here in Maryland. So currently we house over 2.2 million Maryland residents in our registry who are registered organ, eye, and tissue donors. We also work with programs such as this on community outreach, getting out into the communities, and really dispelling myths and misconceptions about organ donation across the country.
Okay. All right. And so go ahead, Kevin. Look at you ready to say something.
Lisa, just for the record and for everybody else know, if you didn't know, this is a multi-generational, and Dr. Draper is my mother, so only her would know that I'm thinking about saying something, right? So good morning, Jewel. Good morning, Byron, and everybody else who's tuning in and maybe never really gotten a chance to see this topic firsthand. I was just saying, organ donation, you hear about people who maybe do it when they pass away, become organ donors, and it's some who do it while they're alive. You've witnessed to save a loved one, a sibling, or a friend, or sometimes just to save a person that they care about. If I was thinking about organ donating, where would I start?
So the first place to start would be our website. You could go on our website, donatelifemaryland.org, and you could register to be an organ donor. Those are deceased donors. Also, Donate Life America, our sister organization who represents nationwide, runs a living donor program, similar to what you were discussing, for people who want to donate a kidney to a loved one or end up in a kind of an organ circle, that we call it, where you may donate an organ to somebody you don't even know, to help save that life as well. So they do offer that program, and you could get information on that at their website, donatelifeamerica.org.
I remember my brother-in-law needed a liver, and it was a list of, I think, 13 people that were called, and when it was time for him to have his transplant, and I guess it's only a certain amount of time, I guess, and I don't know all of the details, but where an organ, I guess, is able to be donated for a certain amount of time. So, God had him in the right position, because 13 people didn't answer the phone.
Wow.
And then he got the call, and that was maybe about 5 years ago when he had a little time left on his life. So, it is thankful for people who even consider organ donations, especially on their deathbed, saying, hey, once they sign up, are they saying, hey, I would like to do it for science or?
So there are a couple options. Currently, most of our registrants come in through the Motor Vehicle Administration. And currently, until actually July 1st, we just changed this law. You could register for transplantation and therapy. So what that would do would be transplantation or therapy to someone who is sick upon your death. So your organs would go to help keep someone alive. As of July 1st, we've changed that. So when you go in to register, get your license at the Motor Vehicle Administration, they'll ask you a twofold question. They'll ask if you want to be an organ donor. And if you say yes, that's for transplantation and therapy. And then they'll also ask you if you'd like to be a donor for research and education, which would then, if organs that can't be transplanted or don't qualify for transplantation and therapy, would then be used for research and education. So to help cure illnesses that are out there that they would need organs to work on that with.
Absolutely, because you think about it. So who does the work? I mean, a person passes away. Typically, I know in the funeral business, someone will come from the funeral home. They'll take the body back to the funeral home, right? Yep. And then they'll check the record.
So we actually start in the hospital. So we're notified when someone's death is imminent. And then we will work with the hospital. Only about 1% of fatalities or deaths result in organ donation. So we're looking at a very minimal number. So even though we have 2.2 million registrants, not all of them are able to be an organ donor. There's two types of ways you can die to be an organ donor. One is death by cardiac event, which would be a heart attack that has to occur in the hospital, or death by brain damage. So those are really the only two ways that we can work with someone to become an organ donor due to, like you stated earlier, the time frames to actually procure organs.
Okay, so I could be on the list and
But not
say,
qualified.
okay, I want to, but I'm not qualified. Or if I don't pass in the hospital, then I'm also off the list.
Correct.
Phew, that makes it even sometimes a slimmer miracle
Right.
to get either a person who has the heart to donate, you know what I mean, to the actual being able to help with science.
Right.
But what is well, if you just tuned in, let me just put a pin in it. This is the Chicken Box, powered by the Afro-American newspaper. 130 years of serving, informing, inspiring, and educating the community. The oldest Black business in Maryland and third oldest family in the country. And we're celebrating our 130th year, August 13th. Hope you can join us. More information will be on afro.com. But we're also having a conversation with Lisa from Donate Life Maryland. I finally figured out how to say it. It makes you want to say something else, but it's just Donate Life Maryland. Okay, it's really simple, but you want to read it to be something else. And we put her website in, and we're discussing the important topic of organ donation. And as a Black community, and it's a community already, but as an African American community, where are we fitting in this picture, and do we really understand how this picture works? So we're really glad that this important topic and conversation is here, because I don't think in my years of life I've just sat down and even had a conversation around any holiday, any group, any setting. I mean, people, we don't even talk about planning our funerals. So organ donation is not really a conversation that's been on our agendas. Dr. Draper?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Lisa, what do you hear most about people's reluctance to be an organ donor?
So I think the biggest reluctance we hear is the fear that medical personnel won't do everything they can to save them. That's the biggest. If I'm an organ donor, they're not going to save me, which I will be completely honest, in my ignorance before coming into this position and really understanding organ donation, that was a fear of mine. I really thought that if it's on my license, they're going to look at my license immediately and they're going to know I'm a donor and they're not going to do everything, which is not true. And that kind of goes back to what you had asked about, how do people become organ donors and how does that process work? We work with the organ procurement organizations. Here in Maryland, it's Living Legacy Foundation and Washington Regional Transplant Community. So when someone passes and we're made aware of that, it's not until then that we even check organ donation status. Hospital personnel don't have authorization to check that. Your fire departments and EMS personnel don't have authorization to check that. I see a question in the chat box that do we partner with other organizations? We absolutely do. We partner with the hospitals, we partner with hospice centers, healthcare groups, anybody we truly can. As you can see, doing this today, partnering with the Afro-American newspaper to really get out there and spread awareness about organ donation. So partnering with these groups, we're working very closely together with the hospitals and the hospice centers to be aware when someone is ready to pass, and then working with them to take the next step at that point to find out if they're an organ donor, and then have a conversation with their family. As you just said, we don't talk about this. We don't sit around the table and talk about planning our funeral or planning if we want to be an organ donor. And I can't tell you how important those conversations are. I can't tell you how important it is to make your wishes known and really make your family aware that organ donation is what I want, and this is how I want it to happen.
Mm-hmm. So let me thank you. Thank you for partnering with the Afro. Donate Life Maryland has partnered with the Afro for a long time. Mm-hmm. We've been partners in getting this word out. So Lisa, walk us through this scenario. I was a chaplain at one time in the hospital, and so somebody, is on life support. Family's been told that their death is imminent, mm-hmm. right? And the the people who are monitoring that call in your team or someone to come to the hospital. What happens if the person has not made his or her wishes known? Go ahead.
If they're not a registered organ donor in our registry, we will have a conversation with the family and see if that's something that the family wants to do. If it's a choice that they make, that they say, yes, that is what they want to do, then we'll proceed with the next steps in organ donation. If they tell us no, then we will work with them to support them on the loss of their loved one. And that will be the end of the conversation.
Can you speak a little bit about the need to make those decisions? I mean, the timing needed to make those decisions?
So the timing to make those decisions, unfortunately, with the loss of life, seems like the worst time ever, but they are critical decisions that have to be made. Organs only last a very short amount of time after someone passes. So once a death has occurred, we have a relatively small window. The most we have is up to 48 hours to procure organs. So we really need to make those decisions quickly and find out if we're going to proceed with the next steps on organ donation, or else we do stand a chance of organs not being suitable for donation.
And what do those next steps look like? Let's say the person says, yes, we want our loved one organs to be donated.
Yep. So the next steps are our organ procurement specialists would come in. They would do testing on the organs to test for their viability and usability as an organ donor and to be transplanted. And then they would proceed with that process. Then the next step would be going to the OR to procure the organs, package them for shipment, and then depending on where they're going to, if it's the same hospital, other hospitals, we work regionally. So organs can be sent, states away in order to save the sickest person on the organ donor waiting list.
Wow. And how many people on that organ, that's a mouthful.
The organ donor waiting list.
Organ donor waiting list.
So there's over 100,000 people currently on the waiting list. And sadly, we see 17 people each day die because they weren't able to get an organ.
That is sad. And so 100,000 people. Now, I read a statistic somewhere that African Americans are among the highest percentage-wise of people needing organ donations. Is that an accurate statistic?
It is. We're looking at about 28.5% of the candidates currently waiting are African Americans. They comprise about 12.9% of organ donors in 2020.
Okay, so that mirrors the population in terms of that part, the 12.8, 12.9, but the percent that's needed, it's like double that, right?
It's 28.5%, yes.
Yeah, that seems like a really, really big number. Here's a question that one of our viewers is asking: are there times when organ donation is denied because of compromised organs, drug use, or some other factor?
We will test organs for viability, so all those tests will be run. There are times when we aren't able to use organs, but we will try everything in our power to be able to use organs if that's someone's wishes.
So when organs are donated, it doesn't matter. Can a Black person have an organ from a non-Black person?
Absolutely. Yep. Organs can be any ethnicity, any race. They can cross lines. They don't discriminate against color, sex.
Right.
Anything.
Okay. Organs seem like they get along fine in the community, huh? They don't have any beef.
They do. They do. Now there's a higher probability for an African American to donate to an African American. It's for match purposes. But just because, if I were to die and I was an organ donor and you needed an organ, there's nothing to say that my organs can't be transplanted into you.
Got you. I don't know if that was anybody else's question, but that was just definitely on my mind because my brother-in-law, my wife said, got a white straight-haired man's liver because his hair began to get straighter. Do different organs change your biological?
I'm not sure about that one, but I can look into that and let you know. That would be interesting.
That was random. We're talking to Lisa from Donate Life America. Okay. We had another question. What is the percentage of African American participation versus other ethnic groups?
So we're looking currently, and I'm going to pull my stat sheet for that one. 12.9% in 2020. Okay. So we're looking about 12.9% of organ donors in 2020 were African Americans.
So compared to it, how about compared to Hispanics or other minorities?
I have to pull those stats.
Oh, okay, no problem. Now that was just random. I was just wondering where we fit in as far as organ donation percentage. I mean, but it still seems hard. You have 2 million people registered, and you already said they have to pass in the hospital, and that all of these circumstances. So, if you've been able to receive an organ donation and you're listening, I mean, it is nothing short of a miracle that it even worked out. Just the fact that 17 people are dying just because there are none available per day, just basically because of organ donation. And so what, I know we're getting in a lot of percentages today, but what percentages of people pass in the hospital opposed to at home?
I'm going to say if we're looking at the percentages, very few people tend to pass in the hospital. That's why we're only seeing that 1% of registered donors being able to donate. So we're looking at those from all aspects of where people have died, cause of death, manner of death, because there's the two specific parameters. So it either has to be brain death or cardiac event in the hospital. So those are really two specific, narrowed down.
You can't pass any other way in your sleep, nothing else.
Your organs immediately start to die when you die. So unless we're able to keep the blood flowing and to keep the organs alive, for lack of a better term, then there's no way to use those organs.
So as an organ donor, this is and I'll let you jump in, Dr. Draper, but as an organ donor, maybe you should notify, but I guess is if you notified, but you still wouldn't.
We don't know when we're going to die. We don't know when we're going to die.
When or how.
Or where or how, right.
Right. Anyway, scratch that. This is the chicken box. This is Black People Versus. We do a versus just to get your mind thinking. Organ donation, guys. And we have Lisa, a special guest from Donate Life Maryland, who's sharing her time, her expertise, and just her passion for spreading this word in the community. And it seems hard, but still register. Believe me, you're not going to feel it when you pass. And they're not going to try to push you over the edge for your organ because you probably not going to die of a heart attack. But you know, or what was the other thing? Brain damage?
Brain death.
Right, brain death. So then the percentage even changes, right? Of people who pass from a heart attack or brain death. So those percentages even go down further.
Right.
Wow. Anyway. All right. Hey, Dolores, how are you?
Yep. So let's get Dolores's question answered first. So you can register when you renew your driver's license. Is there a direct way or more expedient way this viewer wants to know to register?
Sure. You can go to our website, donatelifemaryland.org, and you can click the register button and register right there.
I think we may have put it in the chat as well.
There it is. So Lisa, when you register that way, right, or even by your driver's license. So if you do it by your driver's license, I guess the hospital has a way to kind of backtrack. But how do you keep up with people who just go to the website just to register? How do you get those?
So our registry is all housed in one location.
Okay.
So when the hospital notifies us that there's an imminent death, we will immediately go to the registry, look up your information, your name, date of birth, driver's license, if we have it, to verify that it's you. And that's when we'll start the conversations.
But I'm thinking about the person who didn't do it by way of a driver's license.
It all comes to the same registry.
Okay, so still
So the MVA sends us everybody who's registered through the MVA comes to us, and then anybody who registers on our website goes into that same database.
Okay, and so if a person dies outside the hospital system, then they can still be tracked through the database.
They can. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep, we can track anybody through the database.
Okay, well, thank God for databases. I want to switch the conversation just a little bit. It's related. What is a death notification trainer? I think I remember seeing that in your background. What does that mean?
Death notification training is training law enforcement officers, clergy, anyone who would come into contact with a victim after a death. So essentially teaching you how to notify that someone has been killed or someone has died.
Say a little bit more about that. What is the training? What's involved in the training?
We go through what I did was I went through and majority of people that I trained were police officers, and talked to them about the right and wrong way on approaching a family to say your loved one has died. You hear lots of horror stories about families finding out how their loved one has died, or a police officer knocking on the door and saying, "Oh, are you the mother of?" Well, they're dead. We teach them how to do it with care, with compassion, understanding, and making that family have the best experience they can when learning tragic news.
Okay, so are there some basic things that even, that lay people, what would you say to us who are watching now?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say we have to be the people who deliver that news, or unfortunately we're the people who are receiving that news. What's the best practice?
The best practice, I say, is clear and concise. Always use specific words: dead, died, and make your message clear. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, they're gone. Well, generally a first comment back to that is, well, where did they go? Instead of saying they've died, we've had officers say, well, they're gone. Well, where did they go? They're going to come back, right? Are they lost? So you want to make that message as clear as you can and as concise as you can, so the understanding is clear, so there aren't any questions. Really just getting in there and saying simple words such as, "I'm so sorry." Don't give information that you don't know. We had a family who was told the EMS personnel did everything they could to save your daughter. Well, their daughter was dead on scene, so they didn't do anything because there was nothing to do. So having that, not hope, but that fear that their daughter was still alive and suffered, was excruciating for them. And then finding out later that actually her injuries were so severe that she died immediately gave them peace, because they didn't have that worry that she was in pain and she was hurting.
Got it. So tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
In simple language.
Yeah. I mean, perfect example. I've had to use this personally. My grandmother, she was 92 years old, passed away a few years ago. My youngest son was her ultimate best friend. She would tell everybody in the world. He watched her old movies with her. He would watch baseball with her. I mean, she loved all of her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren, but he really just took to her and spent time with her and just really made her day. When I had to tell him that his grandmother had died, it was the hardest thing that I could ever do. And I had to keep in mind what words to use, because he was young, he was 10. So it was, grandma's died. She was sick, how she was feeling, and she really isn't hurting anymore. And that's what I said to him. And he still remembers those words to this day, 7 years later, still remembers. And truly, I think it helped him to understand that she's not coming back. We're not going to get to go and see her, that she's gone, but she's not hurting. So
that's good advice, because so often people don't know what to say
Right.
deliver that news, and they don't know what
Mhm.
to say after the news has been delivered.
And I say, the everybody says it's so cliche, but saying, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for your loss. I'm so sorry for the death of your daughter, Grace.
Mhm.
Using the victim's name, using their loved one's name is important because it really shows that empathy and shows that you care and you're concerned.
If you
Thank you,
just tuned in, we are talking to Lisa from Donate Life. It's your last name pronounced Spicknell?
It is. Yep.
Okay, because there's a lot of Lisas out there. So in case you didn't know, people. But and we've been talking about organ donation, but part of her background, of course, was is it called grief training?
hmm
Grief training. If you guys didn't know that that even existed, there is grief training out there, and I think we all have had to tell somebody else that somebody else has died or passed away. And I think uh, just hearing your words may help a lot of us. Just do it. It's no easy way to say it usually, right? But
Right.
but it is a human and a sensitive way to empathize with somebody else when they're going through that particular moment in life, right?
And
We
I
all
think that's the key, the human and sensitive way.
absolutely, because if you live long enough, everybody will have to say it at least once. But as you find, maybe our law enforcement officers may have to do it a little bit more. Therefore, i.e., they would need training, but maybe everybody needs some kind of training. Just like we don't think about funerals, we don't think about, okay,
Right.
how am I going to do grief training? How am I going to pass on? But I did have somebody say, you don't have to call me at 3:00 in the morning to tell me, because they will still be dead at 10 when I wake up. You don't have to wake me up in the middle of the night. The news is already hitting me hard enough, but let me sleep at least until the morning and figure it out. Everybody who's tuned in, Diane, Craig, Delois, this is a conversation that you may not have been thinking about, and that's why the chicken box exists, so that we can speak our truths about certain matters and topics that maybe we've never heard about, and maybe some we have heard about, and we just want to dive deeper into the conversation. Talking about grief is like, whew, that becomes heavy even on the screen. But it's part of life. And if you don't, it's like the dirt under the rug. If you don't discuss it, how are you ever going to really understand it?
Yeah, well, Kevin, you're right, and Lisa, I appreciate your perspective on this. It is a topic that people find, I don't make, I don't know if this is a word, but very off-putting. I mean, people don't really want to talk about how. And I appreciate what you said about how you shared with your son who was 10. You have any advice for parents for children who are like much younger than 10, like they can understand some things, but they're not like they're 3 to 5 or 6. Do you have any advice for parents about best practices for sharing the death of a loved one or schoolmate or whatever?
Yeah. Again, I'm very big on being open and honest. Use those clear, concise words, because you don't want to give them hope that if they go to school tomorrow, their friend might still be there or they might be coming back. So have that conversation, explain to them what death is. There are some great resources out there for children who have coped with death or have lost loved ones, and they're all age appropriate. A quick Google search will give you some great resources, very age appropriate books, very age appropriate little tear sheets that you can use to just show them or explain to them about death. So I highly recommend the honesty, the clear choice of words, and then being supportive of their feelings, especially at that age. As adults, we know how we respond to the loss of someone. So responding, seeing how they respond and supporting their responses and their feelings and talking through them to make them understand that it's okay to feel that way. After the loss of someone, How many times have family members laughed for the first time and felt it was so wrong to laugh? Because why should I be happy when we're sitting at a funeral? But reminiscing on the times that you've had and the times that you've shared, and then all of a sudden you're kind of chuckling and you're laughing and you're having a good time, and you look around and there's tears and then everybody's crying. But it's okay to feel that way. And it's the same for children, just supporting them where they are in their journey.
Mhm. That's good advice. This is switching gears, but it's somewhat related. There are lots of people who unfortunately die because of auto accidents and those types of things. You were instrumental, if I remember reading your bio correctly, and helping with the passage of Noah's Law. Can you say a little bit about, for our viewers who may not know what Noah's Law is and what that does, and thank you for your role in that.
Thank you. For 14 years, I worked for Mothers Against Drunk Driving prior to coming to Donate Life. Noah's Law was a law created to reduce drunk driving, truly, to harshen the consequences for those who go out there and drink and drive. Noah's Law was created in honor of Officer Noah Liotta. He was a Montgomery County police officer who was hit and killed while working a DUI patrol by a repeat offender drunk driver. Noah's Law increased the penalties for drunk driving. It added ignition interlock, which most people know is a blow and go, to first convicted offenders for drunk driving, and just ensuring that we really change behavior. You know, we're talking a lot with Donate Life and with registering as donors and talking about with our families, changing that behavior, making sure they're aware. And Noah's Law is doing the same thing by changing behaviors and making sure people are aware of the dangers of impaired driving.
Okay, that's good. It's good legislation. Was there other legislation? I know there has been lots of other legislation, so I don't mean to make it that vague, but that ties into this or that ties into the work that you're doing now, that you are either advocating for or has passed, or came through this year and maybe it'll come back around next year. Anything you want us to be aware of?
So last year, like I said earlier, we had passed legislation to include research and education in motor vehicle administration. Currently, and since inception, you could register as an organ donor for transplantation and therapy and research and education on our website. But we finally last year got it passed to include it at the motor vehicle administration. That's going to be a huge benefit for researchers and to understand diseases and really get out there and work for our researchers and our educators to maybe cure diseases that we haven't had an opportunity to. As always, transplantation and therapy will come first. So don't feel that because you've signed up for research and education, you're not going to be able to save a life. This is only for organs that are not transplantable. So if you sign up for research and education and one of your organs isn't transplantable, maybe it was damaged, maybe you have liver disease, so we can't transplant your liver, but we can use all your other organs, then your liver would go to research and education. So then we could study liver disease in that, maybe come up with a cure. I feel like we're so close to cures in lots of areas, and adding this one little benefit is going to just help masses. So
yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I mean, you're thinking, okay, I can only use them in a living person if it's cardiac arrest or brain damage, but it's so many other uses that will help push forward science in the future.
Exactly.
If you have checked the box. Okay, so your organs still, the 2 million who registered, their organs can still potentially help.
They can still help for good in other ways. Like I said, I think of myself as saving lives in other ways. When you register for research and education, you're saving lives in other ways.
Research and education, guys. If you're looking for the box, and you can go right to the website right now, Donate Life Maryland. And it's people who are not in Maryland who tune into the Chicken Box. Are there other Donate Life organizations, or is it a federal or?
So each state has some type of Donate Life. It might not be called Donate Life, but they promote Donate Life. So you can easily Google Donate Life in your state, and it'll pull it up, or you can visit Donate Life America, which is our national sister organization. And then you can register right on their website. So that's our federal registry. We check both registries. It's all tied together. So you can register either or.
Donate Life America, and I'm sure for those who are outside of the country, it has to be some other.
It has to be, right?
Donate Life organization.
Yep.
If that is what you are being led to do when you pass, now's the time to do it while you're thinking about it.
Right.
It just takes a second to register, because you might have been like, I meant to do that, but then you forget about it after this show. Do it now.
Truly takes minutes to register, and you're done. And you can save up to 8 lives as an organ donor, and you can truly enhance up to 75 lives as a tissue donor.
Right.
So that's something we don't even really talk about, is our tissue donation.
Correct. And you get the little heart on your license.
You do.
So Craig Talley wants to know, are there certain people or religious sects that feel organ donation is wrong?
Surprisingly, no. Every religion that we have worked with and spoken to all support organ donation. They all support giving, and this is a way of giving back. So we highly suggest that you talk to your religious leader and get their view on it. But I think you're going to be surprised to find that we have not come across any religions that do not support organ donation.
Thank you for that answer. Now, the digital streets, as we call them, someone has put on Twitter that you cannot receive an organ transplant if unvaccinated.
So that's not true. And that is definitely not true in Maryland. We have had some back and forth on this. There are some transplant centers that are requiring vaccination, COVID vaccination specifically, along with all of your other vaccinations. So requiring vaccinations is not uncommon for organ donation. And they are including this because it increases the chances for successful transplantation and life after. But I can tell you our transplant centers in Maryland do not have that requirement.
So somebody else is asking, has the pandemic impacted organ donations?
It has. Organ donations during the height of the pandemic were considered elective. So they weren't occurring as frequently as they are now. Sadly and unfortunately as that is. I can tell you before the question even comes up, those who have had COVID, it is an issue with organ donation with lungs because COVID affects the lungs directly. So there is an issue with lung donation if you're an organ donor. But we're working through that. Studies, research and education, really trying to figure out what the long-term effect from COVID is going to be. So until we get those good numbers, right now it has been an issue. But we did see a drop in donation 2019 into 2020, but then rebounded again right back to where we needed to be. So I can also tell you, I know the question was kind of phrased earlier. In the state of Maryland currently, there are 2,624 donors waiting for organ donation. Of those, 1,151 are African American. So only by about 50 more are white or non-Hispanic. So it's about a 50-50 split for organ donors in Maryland are African American.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Absolutely. So once you register, do you select which organs, or you just say, hey, I'm an organ donor and that's everything?
You can do both. You can choose which organs you want to donate, or you can choose to have them all. And that's right on our website. If you log in and register, you can go right in and you can select all, or you can select certain organs.
Gotcha.
So you can pick which ones you donate. Mm-hmm. It seems that some of the research or statistics that I've read talk about the fact that kidneys are like the organ most in demand. I hate to use it that way, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you right now in Maryland, 994 African Americans are currently, of the 1,151, are currently waiting for kidney donations.
So go back. So there are
1,151 currently on the waiting list.
And 994 of those are for kidneys.
Are for kidneys.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a big percentage.
Yes. And that's just the African American community. There's 668 in the white community, 127 in the Asian community, and 85 in the Hispanic Latino community.
Okay. And so looking through all those numbers, more African Americans than any other ethnic group are waiting for
kidneys.
For kidneys.
Right.
And only maybe 10% or 12% are waiting for other.
Correct.
For other organs. And putting that in perspective, that's how many people are waiting. On average, how many kidneys are available? I know it comes from all over, but
they do come from all over, and it varies. Like I said, we're only looking at 1% of deaths each day. So depending on the number of people that die that day, you're only looking at 1% of those that actually can become organ donors. So very minimal number, and that's why the list is so high, and that's why it's so important to become an organ donor.
Absolutely. This has been an eye-opening, informational conversation. I learned a few things. I always come into every chicken box hoping to learn something, to gain a new perspective about something that I don't know a lot about. I hope everybody else has had the chance again. This was Black People versus Organ Donation, but we were talking to Lisa Spicknell, is the executive director of Donate Life. I'm not looking at your bio. I'm trying to put it all in and get through my grief speech. We've had some grief training today. We've learned about organ donation. We've learned about how it works. We learned about if it doesn't work for a live individual in those certain situations, or it doesn't occur in the hospital, your organs can still be used to push forward for science and to help us learn more about cures and treatments going forward. So they do something great. It's over 2 million people registered. And it is something, if you hadn't thought about it, to think about. We're wrapping up and coming to our final moments. And, sometimes we're here an hour, but we don't have to push an hour just to say, did we stay here for an hour, everybody? So we're going to get on the box and we're going to give our final words. I'll go first. I wasn't sure about what organ donation was all about. It made me rethink it. I do know people who have had the miracle of an organ really saving their life. So I 100% believe in it. And so I think I may have skipped over that question every time they asked me when I renewed my license. And good thing about it is I don't have to wait anymore. I can go straight to the website, Donate Life, and register. It takes a few minutes. And you don't know the good that you're doing today, but you know that if your intention was to do something good, then now's the time to do it while you're thinking about it. So I'm off the box. I'll let Lisa go last, Dr. Dre. So it's a chicken box. You get to stand on it, speak your truth, blow your bullhorn. Yeah, you better donate. No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, Dr. Draper.
Well, I'm going to get on the box and say I've been an organ donor ever since I could check that box to say that I would do that. I did not know, and thank you, Lisa, that I can also check off that I would do it for research and education in the event that when I die at 115, my organs are not viable and not usable. I've heard in not just the African American community, people say things like, "I don't want my loved one cut on when they die." I've heard that before. Kevin's Impeccable said something earlier. If I'm dead, I won't feel it. So if it can help somebody, and it's not going to make me look any different in the casket either. So if I can help somebody else save a life, whether it's because my organ is good enough to use, or because it helps to aid in education and research. I just want to encourage people, as Impeccable said, think about it, and think about the fact that there are so many people of all ethnicities, all ages, waiting for a gift of life. And so that's why it's called Donate Life. And so there are people who are waiting, and once you're gone, within 48 hours, your organs are gone too, if you do nothing. If you do nothing. And so I just want to want to thank you, Alisa, for joining us on today. Thank you, too, for your contribution to the Afro, for the information that you've provided. It was in, I believe, I want to say last edition, and Donate Life has been a great supporter. And so we thank you for that. And so I just want to encourage everybody to at least look into it. And the last thing I want to say before I get off the box is make your wishes known. Then families don't have to argue about it. They don't have to speculate about it. You've already predetermined that this is what you want to happen, not if you die, when you die, because all of us are going that way. Unless Jesus comes back first, but we're all going to die. So I would just say, it's so much better when you make your own decision about your own body, and then your family doesn't have to have the hard conversation about it. Everybody knows what your wishes were, and hopefully, your license and other things also indicate that, and then people will just do what you want to have done, not what they think you might have wanted to have done. So I'm off the box.
And don't beat up the people at the hospital. I know it seems like an insensitive time. Hey, would you guys like to donate your donate? No, I'm just dealing with my death. My mom and my dad, my grandmother just passed away. I don't want to hear about no organs. Okay. Be nice to the people because they're just thinking about possibly helping somebody else. It does seem like a wrong, insensitive time because I would probably be upset too before this conversation. But Lisa, you're on the box. You have the final words today from Donate Life, and thank you again for being with us and sharing.
Thank you to the Afro for having me today. I really appreciate the opportunity. As you've already heard, register, become an organ donor. You can save up to 8 lives. You can enhance up to 75 lives, or you can save so many more lives by choosing research and education as well. Have the tough conversations, have the conversations with your family, make your wishes known, and just know that we're all out here saving lives in a different way. I appreciate everything that the Afro has done for us over the years, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here today.
Absolutely. Everybody have a great day. Register now. You get robocalls that say register. We need some robocalls that say register for life. Anyway, have a great day.
And also, before you go to afro.com and sign up to be a member. Since we're in the signing up mode, let's sign up for our free newsletter, but sign up also for a subscription. For Kevin, Impeccable would say for less than the cost of 2 Uber Eats, $40 a year, we'll send you the digital version, and we appreciate your support. And join us on June 26th, if you're in the DC area, for our high tea honoring Kathy Hughes and Dorothy Gilliam and Denise Rollock Barnes, women of the media, and a couple of other surprises. And join us on August 13th at Martin's Crosswinds as we celebrate 130 years. You might not remember any of those dates. That's why just go to afro.com.
I'm practicing being quiet. Anyway, have a great day, everybody. Talk to you later.